Hello, everyone, and welcome to InvenTank, the show for inventors where I'm joined by a special guest host each and every week for some fun conversation and to help answer all your burning invention questions. I'm your host, Lisa Lloyd, and we're streaming live today, or you may be catching the replay on Spotify, Amazon, or iHeart. InvenTank is made possible by the Invention Accelerator, helping inventors to skip that painful and expensive learning curve to invent wow products, protect them properly, and get them in front of the right people at the right companies to pitch like a pro for licensing. If you would like to join any of our live shows to ask your burning invention questions, then go to theinventionaccelerator.com to join our mailing list and get notified on when and where you can join us live also. So in a moment, we'll begin taking your questions. So feel free to drop them in the chat or in the comments at any time. You might be on YouTube or LinkedIn. I don't see all of them, just so that you know. I'm sorry, I can't post for all of you, but I can see all of them is what I mean to say. So I won't be in the chat. I'll answer them for you live here, and you become a part of our show, which is very exciting. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce our special guest today. We have Andini Makosinski, Andini invented the hollow flashlight, which runs off of the heat of the human hand. Mind blown. And she went on to also invent e-drink, which is a coffee mug that converts, or any kind of mug that converts heat from your drink into an electric current to charge your phone. Oh my God. She's won numerous awards, appeared twice on Jimmy Fallon, and has been in 5 TEDx talks. And get this, she's only 24 years old. Oh my God. Holy cow, girl. Andini, thank you so much. You've done more with your short time on this planet than most will do in a lifetime. Your bravery is absolutely amazing to me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're privileged to get you, girl. Before we get too far into helping folks with, what maybe their challenges or struggles are, tell us a little bit about the background and how you get started. I've watched so many of your videos. I could never get enough of hearing your story anyway, but if you can, just generally how you got started with the flashlight and where you're at with your products now.
Right. So my first toy was a box of transistors and other electronic parts. And from there, I would take my hot glue gun and garbage from around the house and piece together my very first inventions.
And how old were you?
Oh, I don't know. 2, 3. I have no idea. I don't remember most of my childhood.
So when other kids are going to walk and eat, you're putting semiconductors together.
So I was kind of making these non-functional inventions at a young age, and then learning how to solder when I was 8 maybe or 9 years old, and always taking apart old electronics. From there, from grade 6 to grade 12, I did 10 science fairs. So I was kind of inundated into the science fair world, and that's kind of where a lot of my inventions came through. So my hollow flashlight invention was inspired by my friend in the Philippines, as I'm half Filipino. She told me that she had failed her grade in school because she couldn't afford electricity, so she had no light to study with at night. So I decided to create a solution for her, a light source that wouldn't require batteries, and I ended up creating the hollow flashlight, which is a flashlight that runs off the heat of your hand. And then in grade 12, I noticed that most of my classmates' phones were always running out of battery and that their coffee was taking too long to cool down. So I made the e-drink, which is a coffee mug that harvests the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity to give your phone a boost of energy. So I guess that's how I got started with inventing stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. And how long was that process for you when your friend told you about the idea and you were inspired to the point that you had started entering in competitions?
Well, I'd always entered in competitions since grade 6, so it was just a yearly thing. I knew every April or March, I don't remember, I'd have to have a project ready. Okay. My friend's problem with the flashlight, she told me initially when I was in grade 9, actually, and I created a piezoelectric flashlight using piezoelectric discs, so that harnessed the kinetic energy of humans, but it was kind of noisy and tedious. So in grade 10, the next year, I decided instead of using the physical kinetic energy of humans, I would use the thermal energy of humans. So I presented the flashlight in grade 10 at my local science fair on Vancouver Island, where I'm from. Then I went to the Canada-wide science fair with it that May. And then in September of 2013, in my grade 11 year, I went to the Google Science Fair with the flashlight and a headlamp version as well. And then I also went later in 2014 in May during my grade 11 year to the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair with that as well.
And you won those competitions.
Yeah, I won various awards at them. Yeah.
You say so humbly. Yeah, well, yeah, I won. You're talking about the more invention part and not so much about the success part, which is an important part of what I wanted to really point out to our audience today. Because I think as you follow along, folks, you're going to notice that Andini, she's in love with the process. She's in love with the art of inventing. So you've been called a genius many times, more passionate about the invention part than the other part, which you have to do, which is the commercialization side. But you're not as comfortable with science as some people might think, with all of this fancy talk about tech, especially.
I am comfortable with science. I just don't think it's the only thing I want to do in my life. I think I've always had a passion for the arts as well, but also a passion for science and creativity. But when I started getting interviews for the flashlight, all of that, when I was 15 years old, the media would kind of ask the same 10 questions and left seeing a sliver of who I was. And it was only science related questions and how I should be an engineer and all these things. And it became very confusing for me as a young person who was still finding out my own identity of, okay, am I supposed to be doing science because everyone expects me to do it? Or is this something that I really want to pursue in a degree format? So when it came for me to choose university, I actually ended up deciding to do English literature because I'd always loved storytelling and film. And I didn't see why I had to give that up to pursue science as well. So I was studying art inside of school, and outside of school, I had my own company, was getting patents for my inventions, things like that. Science never came naturally to me in school, although I do also think that's part of the educational system, not necessarily, and the way we were taught it, not necessarily the subject itself. I really and math did not come naturally to me. Physics, I really struggled with. I had to drop out and do it in summer school after I graduated high school because physics 12, that is, just because I couldn't do it inside of school. And I did math tutoring programs called Kumon since grade 3. So none of it really came naturally to me, but the part that I did really enjoy, and I find that the things I enjoy I'm much better at than the things I'm unwillingly dragged to, like
right.
But the things I enjoyed about science was just tinkering and making things with my hands, and I didn't see that and experience that in the educational system, and I think that made me kind of not like my science classes as much.
Oh, girl, I can so relate. I remember trying to memorize the periodic table, and because of my ADHD, memorization was always very difficult. But I thought that made me stupid. And I got poor grades, and I barely made it through high school. And I thought for sure I would never make it through college. And what I always loved, like you, was tinkering.
Yeah.
Solving problems, any kind of problem. Software, it could be systems, it could be methodologies, processes, or products, whatever. And I couldn't find a degree that I could excel at that I would love, to your point. So I didn't go. I went for a little bit, but I'm a classic entrepreneur dropout. And then I went on and I did my first invention when I was 23 and had it licensed by 25 and was getting $60,000 a year in passive income.
Wow.
And the job that I had at 23 when I started, I was only making $13,000 a year. So I went from 13 to 60, which I split with my mom. So from 13 to 30, because like you, first call I made, Mom, I have an idea. So tell us about the kind of help that you got along the way, especially starting at such a young age.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have parents that didn't give me everything. And I think that really forced me to be more creative with whatever I did have. My mother came from a very small village in the Philippines. She immigrated to Canada when she married my dad with a backpack. That was literally all she had. And my father he's a bit older. He was born during World War II in Poland, and he grew up in communist Poland where they had nothing. So they both grew up very frugally. And my father, he had always had an interest in electronics as well, but he was scolded by his mom when he took apart their only pocket watch, the radio. So he wanted to make sure that I grew up in an environment where I could take apart anything I wanted, perhaps because that was his dream childhood that he was overlaying onto me. But either way, it was still great. And he introduced me to the basics of electronics and really helped push me to finish any of my projects, because as a teenager, I would have definitely not done any of them to the point of actually being able to present them if it were not for my parents making sure I was making everything, heading everything in on time.
Do you have any of your products with you that you can show us?
1 minute.
So for those of you who are just joining us, if you would like to drop your questions in the comments at any time, we will take them in the order that they're received. Please feel free to do that. Any questions, any invention questions, nothing's off limits there. It doesn't have to be necessarily what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're lucky. I'm just unpacking everything from New York, so I wasn't sure. But this is like, I feel like I'm really zoomed in. This was one prototype of the flashlight, and there's the Peltier tile there on the back. It's just 3D printed, and then it lights up. This is like
just from the
daylight, but yeah.
So when you were experimenting, tell us about fill in some gaps for me. Your friend says she can't see. How does it turn into a handheld flashlight that works off the heat from your own hand? How does your thought process get there?
Honestly, don't remember.
Did you have the idea as soon as she said it because you'd already been working with technology, or did you start saying, how do I solve this problem? Was that the beginning of investigating and experimenting?
I had been, sorry,
it's okay.
Parts of my youthhood, I just honestly don't remember. What I do remember is that I had been playing with thermoelectric generators, these tiles. Sorry, my camera, am I zoomed in?
No, you look great. No,
okay.
No, it's close right now.
Because like the preview shows just my face, but then the wider one shows like this much.
Yeah, no, the preview, the one with you next to me is what everyone sees.
Okay, cool. So I'll hold it up. So these white tiles I had played with since grade 7 in various different inventions for science fair projects. Like I did one, because these are thermoelectric generators. They're Peltier tiles. They have 2 dissimilar metals in them, usually bismuth and telluride, and many, many tiny different junctions of them. And so if my hand is this Peltier tile and I'm heating one side of the tile and I'm cooling the other, I get a very small amount of electricity. So I had done a project in grade 7 where I heated one side of the tile with a candle's flame and then cooled the other side with these like giant computer heat sinks. And then I got enough power to like make a small radio run. So that was one project. And then I used also thermoelectric generators underneath solar cells, and I housed them in like a plastic takeout container to have this kind of greenhouse effect. So while the solar cell was being charged by the sun, the whole container would heat up, heat one side of the Peltier tiles, and the other side was actually cooled by floating in the water. So I had played with these for a while, and I don't know, just felt kind of natural to see if I could do something with human heat, because we are 100-watt walking light bulbs. We generate so much energy in the form of heat, and it's lost most of the time.
Yeah, just wasted energy. So you're just, it was an exploratory process where you just were experimenting, tinkering, playing, learning, as opposed to, I'm going to sit down to invent this solution. And the discovery was made as you learned about the technology and realized how you could apply that tech to her problem. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, but I mean, this happened over a series of years.
Sure.
And I wasn't like working on it every day. You know, I was like 12, 13. So I was like,
right.
Doing things and going to school and all that. But yeah.
Well, we're glad that it wasn't your only part of the only part. Although it can be consuming when you get excited about it. So Stefan is asking, how did you hear about the tiles?
Great question, Stefan. I believe I heard about them. We have a lot of very old electronics books in our house from like the 40s and 50s. We have a lot of old Popular Mechanic. I'm not sure if that's the correct name.
Yeah, that's right. Popular Mechanic
magazines. And there was some article in a magazine about like post World War II, or maybe pre or during World War II, lamps or oil lamps or gas lamps that were using thermoelectric generators, or a very early form of them. And I think I learned about it through there, I believe.
So when it came time to actually make something that you knew now that you wanted to invent after all of that discovery and exploration, thought, okay, this is a solution for my friend. What's next? Now you have to actually physically build it and potentially patent it. You talked about that in your one of your TEDx talks, or actually probably all of them. Who did you go to for help, or how did you navigate that process? Because your parents didn't know either, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, my dad was my main mentor for sure while making my inventions, since he had a background in tinkering and electronics as well. His degree is in education, like to be a teacher, and he has a degree in film.
Perfect.
So he's kind of been an unofficial science tinkerer, just like
Yep.
me. But yeah, I think
Very proud of you.
The next steps were just prototyping and drawing. I draw a lot beforehand. I sketch the ideas that I have, and then I start measuring the tiles and the diameter and, you know, like what size I think it might turn out to be for the physical part of it. And then also with the Peltier tiles, the main problem was that they were generating some energy, but not enough to light an LED.
Right.
So I had to find and research a lot about circuits and voltage boosting circuits to find something that could work. Because the first time I, you know, connected a Peltier tile to an LED, I put my palm on the tile, like nothing happened. And I was like, what's wrong? There's no light. So that was kind of the biggest hurdle for sure.
You mentioned that in one of your talks that you don't see obstacles as being stopping points, but opportunities to learn and grow from those problems. I think it was your TED Talk, The Problem with Inventing. So you were talking about how that the problem is the fun part, basically. Those are all opportunities and challenges. Were there any dark days where you got especially frustrated or thought about quitting or giving up on an idea?
I think many times, more so in high school in grades 10 to 12, because I was the only one in my grade who did science fair. It wasn't like a school requirement. It was just something I did outside of school. I became a bit frustrated, as any teenager would, that, oh, all my friends are going to the school dance or the gala, and I have to stay back and work on my invention at home. Like, this sucks. And I have definitely angry diary entries about that.
I love it.
But I'm glad that, I mean, I probably didn't miss that much, honestly, and I still managed to go to a lot of stuff that my grade was doing. But I'm glad, you know, you have to sacrifice some of your time socially, I think, for any invention. And I think that can be very, very frustrating as a young person, unless you hate socializing. But for me, I've always loved a balance of work and play. So that definitely was a more difficult period for me as a teenager. I think, you know, recently over the past couple of years, I had some bad experiences in business where I had to give up basically like 2 years of work on a line of children's toys that run off of green energy. And I've just found the business world more daunting and frustrating and very corrupt most of the time. And I've really struggled to find people that I can work with that I really trust and that aren't just in it to make a dime off you, more than a dime. So yeah, I think more recently, actually, I've experienced times where I've just been like, why am I doing this? Like, where is this going to go? But it's okay. I'm sure I'll recover and start inventing some new toy ideas in the future.
You know, it was a toy that cost me everything.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I had a massive like nervous breakdown, identity crisis. I ran away to New Orleans to hide from the rest of the world because I was so embarrassed because I failed publicly. So big, right? So I went from being a millionaire by the time I was 30 to being completely broke and starting over at 42. And it was tough to come back after that. But what I remember in my journey is that, like you, I started very young. I was 23, not two. I was always tinkering like you. I love you show this picture, and I wish I had it handy. I'd pop it up, but of you putting ridiculous things together, and they didn't work, but you were imagining they would work. And that's just such a great playful skill. And that curiosity is what makes great inventors. And then you grow up and you kind of show up into the real world, and the ugly shows up. The economics always have to make sense, which takes a lot of the fun out of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And then just the bad actors that are in the world. that see an opportunity and want to ride your coattails.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very disheartening, and it doesn't ever go away. You just get smarter about choosing who to spend your time with and how to reframe your thinking so you can get back to having fun and not always focusing. What I find works best for me is I have different hats and I tell myself what hat I'm putting on. Right now, I'm just inventing, which means I'm not thinking about the money. I'm not thinking about the outcome, not thinking about the license. I'm just playfully solving a problem and having fun with that. And then each hat changes for the stage that I have to deal with. And by the time I get to the licensing stage, it's all business. It's all business at that point. Yeah, right. Stephen has a question he was asking, or Stefan, I'm sorry. Wonderful story, by the way. Did manufacturers contact you or did you find them?
So it was a good question because when I started getting attention and my invention went viral on the internet, I was 15. And I think a lot of people knew that. So they were approaching me. I got approached by a lot of different companies and none of them wanted to like work with me in a nice way where it was fair. It was mainly like, oh, this girl is really young and has an idea that's great that we can make money off of. And the deals that I was offered at the time were just truly horrendous. But it's also because like my father and my mother have no business experience. So like we didn't know what we were getting into either. And it was, you know, when I made the invention, it was like for my science fair project. It wasn't like, oh, I want to make lots of money off of this. So I truly had no idea what I was getting into. And there were times where we signed with someone and they had the patent for like a year, you know, licensing, and then they would do nothing with it or drag their feet or like be non-communicative. And other times where I signed bad deals that were just because I think in it's very easy to trust someone that you've known for many, 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 many years and feels like they're your second parent. And I kind of would always just listen to them and be like, yep, that sounds right. I'm going to do that. And, you know, I was 19, I was 20, like I didn't know what I was doing. And I think I made a lot of very big mistakes that way, just trusting people way too easily and being like, no, I don't need a lawyer. Like they really care about me. So I'm sure they wouldn't want to exploit me. So yeah, it's definitely been a complicated learning experience. But yeah, I did get contacted by a lot of manufacturers. However, the other problem is like a company would reach out and they were like, oh, we really want to sell your invention. We don't want to work on it though. So like when it's ready for production, just let us know. And I was like, that is not useful to me as someone who's 19, 20 and still going to school and I don't want to drop out. Like I have this idea and I have the patent for it. I need like a team of engineers to work on this. And they just didn't want to do that. So that was the issue. And also the other issue is that the flashlight's great, but it's not comparable to a battery run flashlight brightness wise. So it's difficult for companies to be like, oh, this will be really good on the market because it's going to compete against all these other flashlights. So because there are no batteries in the flashlight. I mean, that was the whole point. So it's a little tricky, but it's been an interesting learning process for sure for me.
What about the e-mug? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I got contacted by some companies as well for the e-drink. But again, I think it was more like a proof of concept thing, and I never really got it to the stage where I was like, this is ready for market. Also, because the other main issue is that Peltier tiles are less than 10% efficient in producing energy because they're not usually designed for that. I mean, what we usually see Peltier tiles in is the reverse effect, where we run electricity through the tiles and one side becomes really cool and the other really hot. And those we see in portable coolers, fridges, things like that. So it's been just very difficult, you know, to charge the e-drink. The amount of times I have to actually drink and like pour hot water, wait for it to cool down, and then, you know, drink it. It just wasn't a realistic product. Maybe in the future, once Peltier tiles become more efficient, I think would be cool. I know there's a company called Matrix based in San Francisco that make watches that are powered by the heat of your wrist, I guess, using thermoelectric generators. I think that idea has been around since the 70s, though, but they are doing cool stuff, and I'm excited to see where the technology goes.
Very cool. Derek is asking, as you were going through your high school years, and I think you kind of talked about this, but it was very early in our program. Did you ever envision yourself doing what you're doing now?
I think I'm getting closer to what I envisioned that I wanted to do when I was in high school. I mean, before all this science stuff happened, all my diaries were filled of wanting to work in film and be a director or be on screen. And I think I'm getting very close. And it's funny how a life path that you think wouldn't lead to that could potentially do that. Or maybe subconsciously, I've always been directing what I'd be doing to do that instead. Um, I truly never imagined myself as a public speaker, earning money that way. Any of that. I don't think anyone, I mean, maybe some people grew up and being like, I want to be a public speaker, but that definitely, I mean, I enjoyed drama and performing and I took, speech arts and things like that, but I never thought that would be my main source of income. And then inventing wise, I always liked inventing and doing science fairs, but I didn't know if it would ever lead to anything. I think I felt a lot of pressure from my family and the public, but my family to go into the sciences, which is probably why I totally ran away from it in university.
So interesting.
If you want your child to do science, never talk about science.
Tell them not to, and then they will want to.
I think I've always done the opposite of what people wanted me to do or expected me to do. So,
good lessons learned. So the mug and the flashlight are not currently on the market.
No.
What's interesting about that, and it makes perfect sense, you solved a problem for people in a third world country who struggle with being able to get water, light, whatever, basic utilities that we take for granted. That's not going to be a market you're going to make a lot of money selling a product to.
Yeah, that's something.
It's charity. It's world service. It's a philanthropic kind of thing. And I don't know if maybe we can help. We can find a way to get a company that would sponsor it for a village, and then it can get made. For example, right? So it's more of a B Corp.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely very feasible. I mean, I wanted to get them in like emergency kits or used as reading
That's a good idea too.
Things like that. Yeah. Because they can sit for years and they never run out of battery. The battery doesn't corrode because there's nothing. So,
and sometimes just a little bit of light is all you need anyway. So it's okay. Let's see if I missed a question here. I felt like I did. Here, Stefan was also asking if your products draw heat from the human body. Have you used them to cool people as they generate light, etc.?
That's a great question. The thing is, one side of the tile always has to be hot and the other side needs to be cooled continuously. So the problem is if I strapped a Peltier tile onto your arm, yes, one side's getting heated, but the other side needs to be cooled, either because you're running or there's like a huge metal heat sink with fins on it, which isn't very aesthetically pleasing or something that people want to wear. So it's kind of, because I know the idea of the matrix and like generating electricity from human heat is like very exciting. And I think there's a few but yeah, getting people to cool down. I mean, I had the idea of like using one of these. Wait, where's the camera?
Yeah,
here, and like putting a tile on them, and then I am technically cooling myself with the fan. But
is it possible for that power to generate enough?
I think so, with a simple motor. I actually probably should just try and do that this summer.
Will you come back and show it to us if you do?
Of course, yeah.
That would be awesome. Okay, I just want to share with everyone, you posted you spoke in a TED Talk, and this was a video that these were the 5 questions you told your audience to ask yourself if you're thinking about bringing a new product to market. Beginning with, is the problem worth finding a solution? So how do you find out? And I know when you were young, it was just about, ooh, let's play with this. Let's experiment and see what results come. So that's one type of science, research science, right? Let's just experiment. And then there's inventing with intention. I want to make money doing this. So there is a process. And I see these questions really lending themselves more to that specific audience in this case. So I'm sure this became a lesson for you later in life, not earlier. And you probably have some processes now. How do you go about determining if the problem is worth finding a solution for now?
Well, I think it's always now, because if you're setting out that way to make an invention and to solve a problem, you need to see what already exists. Because if you're making something that already exists and trying to introduce it to the market, it cannot always go well. So I think what you need to do is look at pre-existing solutions and find out why they aren't working properly and how your invention or design will offer more value to the potential customer or user than what currently is on the market. And that was something I kind of learned through my more entrepreneurial journey, because there was a phase of my life when I was like 18, 19 that I was like really into being like a young entrepreneur, and I wanted to drop out of the Teal Fellowship and all of that. But yeah, I think, you know, seeing what already exists and like be like, okay, this is cool, but how can mine be better or function better or maybe is more sustainable? You know, there's many ways to improve upon existing inventions. And, you know, I think imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So if you see something that exists and go, that's really cool, but I think I can make it a little better, why not?
Right
As
on.
long as you're not infringing on their patent.
Right, exactly. As long as it's in the public domain or you have their permission. Yeah. We always say, is it a big enough pain for enough people that it's worth solving the problem? Then there's a commercial opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also true though, even for like your villages. In fact, Wendy just mentioned, thanks Wendy, by the way, for saying this. She said, I just saw an article related to people in small villages in remote India, 120 degrees, no electricity or fans, AC. People are desperate.
I'm
so
sure.
There's space for this. Maybe if anybody's within the sound of our voices today or on the future replay, someone will want to join us and help us make this happen for you. The next question, do you have the time to focus on your solution? How much time do you think it takes to do this?
I think that's really dependent on what you're making. I don't think I could answer that.
Right.
But I think, yeah, also depends on your own job. If inventing is your only job, or if you know, go to a 9 to 5 and then after, you know, you come back home to your family and you want to work on stuff. But I think our body and our minds kind of show us what innately we want to spend time on. I think we kind of gravitate towards the things that we really want to do in life. So you really need to let your mind kind of lead you and see, is this something that I really want to dedicate? Because it's not just about like, oh, I'm dedicating time to make the working prototype. It's like after that, all the time that goes into like reaching out to people or like getting investors and like making the actual working thing and, you know, getting patents and all of that. It's a lot of time and money invested, not just in the initial design of it, but afterwards.
Right on. And this was back in 2014 that you did this TEDx talk. So I'm sure you've learned a lot about that since then as well, right? Is the solution practical to make? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I'm trying to remember why I said that. I guess kind of.
I'll tell you what, before you do, I'm going to read the last two questions and then I'm going to reframe it. The next one was who and how many people will benefit from it, which goes back to, I think, your first bullet as well. And then, can I afford a patent? So now having reviewed these, because I know you said you hadn't seen these, you haven't even reviewed what you did. This was back in 2014, a long time ago, plus you're a lot younger. Are these still the bullets that you would say today? Or what have you learned that is different today that might be more meaningful?
When it comes to inventing, I definitely think can I afford a patent should still be on the list. Patents are very expensive, both in time and money and emotions. Arguing with owners, I can't tell you the amount of time my father and I have both spent trying to get North American patents, both in Canada and the US, for the e-drink and the flashlight. Truly, it's still going on till now, which is insane.
Wow.
But I have patents, which is great. So that is definitely part of it. I would definitely say now I'd actually be more concerned about who am I working with? Are they good people? Because there's a difference, and needs to be a difference between people who are good at business and people who are good people and also good at business. Because I think you can find people that are, you know, they can be the sharks when you need them to be in negotiations, but are still, you know, decent people that care about you and working with you and maintaining relationships with potential clients. So now I would definitely put that on the list.
That's a good one.
And now I would also say, before getting involved with any businesses, always having a good lawyer is very important, who really knows what they're doing. Have them on retainer or whatever it may be, but a lawyer, especially for inventors, you need to protect yourself. And you need to protect your ideas. So again, that goes back to the patents as well. And I would say just instead of do I have the time, but also do I want to make time? And if so, what would it look like?
The only difference, and I think that's probably even what you meant at the time, but didn't know how to articulaate.
Yeah.
Because you'll put the time into something that you're passionate about, if you're excited about it.
Yeah. Don't do something just because you think it'll earn money. Like do something because you're excited about it.
Oh, so glad you said that. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. I'm so glad you said that because it seems to me, in my experience, it was all fun until I depended on it for income.
Yeah, totally.
And now I was afraid. And when you come from a mind space of fear, your creativity is squashed.
Yeah, and I think that's actually when you make sometimes some of the worst decisions.
Right?
When you're acting out of fear. Yeah.
Short-sighted. So now that you're getting a little older and starting to experience more of that, are you aware when that's starting to happen? Do you have any advice for someone who might be afraid right now about what to do next because they're really depending on it, how they can maybe reframe their thinking?
I don't know. I would say if you really believe in something, you should just always go for it, even if that is taking a risk. But I think it's important to have at least some backup money or plan just in case things go awry. I always try and have a backup plan, not because I want to do it. Let me put it this way. I don't have a solid backup plan because I believe in myself and what I want to do. But I know if nothing worked out for me, at least I'll have my degree, or at least I can go to one of my entrepreneur friends and be like, hey, can you hire me? And they would say yes. But I don't have an actual backup plan because I believe in what I'm doing and want to achieve, which is terrifying for my parents. Which is why I'm getting my degree by end of this. But when you are scared, I think also it's because you're at the precipice of growth, of potential growth and learning, of a totally new experience. And most of us as humans are afraid of change. We just, in history, we're just shown to be terrified of when something new or even new technologies being incorporated into our lives. People were dubious about the radio, about, film, about motion picture before it became a normalized thing. So people are always scared of change and new things, but often it leads to great growth and progress for both yourself and potentially humanity when you have an invention like that.
Profoundly wise. My mother always tried to get me to go to college. And in fact, I wanted to be a model. So I went to New York and I'm petite. So I went to a petite agency. And of course, they told me all these need thicker eyebrows and bigger lips. So I went home in disgust and said, okay, I'll go to college. And she said, too late. I took the money, enrolled myself, and she went to college. Wow. So I ended up going into the Navy, and that's how I did go to some college. But when I got out and started tinkering and invented my first product, the French twister, all of a sudden I had this success. And she goes back and says, I'm so glad you didn't go to college. It would have ruined you. Because of the institutional thinking, the way of doing, following rules actually can make you think critically too much. There's a time for critical thinking, right? But you can get scared by all of that critical thinking into not moving forward. Your playful curiosity and inventive side can be squashed. How do you find balancing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as adults, we just tend to squash ideas we have because we're like, oh, it's not realistic, or oh, I don't have enough money for that. I don't know. I don't have the resources, the tools, things like that. And I think it's really important as an adult to be like, yeah, I don't have the resources, but could I get them? Like, is this possible? Could I try? Or, yeah, I need to connect to this professor to actually get into that lab, but maybe I could just ask. And I think the beauty of asking is you never know what you can get.
Yes.
Sometimes people will say yes because they will want to help if they're nice people. So yeah, I personally really enjoyed school, mostly because of the subjects I'm studying, and a lot of them are in film history, which I just love, and analyzing and finding symbols and themes. All of that is just like one of my favorite activities. So I've found school very wonderful, but also I've had a total different life outside of school, which has been able to give me a lot of perspective of what is feasible. Because sometimes when you're in school, especially college, it feels like, oh, like yeah, I'm going to college, and then, I hope to get a job remotely related to my degree, but I'm going to have to use it to pay off my student loans. And like, it's a whole thing,
Mhm.
So I think I've been really lucky to be traveling around the world, meeting amazing peoples at conferences and, making things and, while school's been going on. So it's been able to give me, I guess, a little bit of a bigger perspective of what is feasible as a young person, and allowed me to really dream big, even though I think I always have been that sort of person from a very young age. Um, but yeah, it's easy to shut down ideas, but I always just carry around a notebook and a pen, and I'll write down ideas or sketch them out, or even if it's like a funny line or scene that I see, I'll just write it down, because you never know what will come of them. And
Right.
why not at least put it into existence? Because as soon as we get an idea, it's like an ember in a fire. It's already starting to burn out. So as soon if we can capture just whatever we remember from it as soon as possible, I think that's crucial. And I think sometimes you get your best ideas when you are zoning out and it's been something that's been percolating at the back of your mind for weeks, months, and then something just shoots forward. So as soon as you get the idea, you got to jot it down, and not shoot it down, as
Oh,
many
I love that. Jot it down, don't shoot it down. I love that.
do that
Because
up.
sometimes, well, see that? Those are the best ones. Write it down. It's good because I don't have to take action immediately when I'm inspired, something pops in my head. But if I write it down, it percolates. That's what I've noticed.
Mhm.
And it's the one that keeps bubbling back up to the surface
Yeah.
that I end up taking action on. So I have a long list of ideas. Doesn't mean I immediately go online and see what their potential is. I guess it depends on how stirred I am inside, like how excited I am when it downloads into my brain, I say. What is some of the changing gears just a little bit here? So one of the reasons I was most excited about talking to you was so that you can help me remember what it's like to be young and uninhibited by all of the critical, cynical things of the world. That I got to the point where after my last invention, the TC Pets, the one that I was on Shark Tank and lost my mind over, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to recover. I'd never have a good idea. And if I did, I certainly wasn't going to take a risk on it. Like I put all my eggs in that basket.
Mm.
And so recovering from that, say that there should be a 12-step program for recovering entrepreneurs because it's so hard sometimes. But while recovering from that, I have little by little had to go back and just remember what I loved about it. And then playing and breaking things. Now I'm back into the flow of inventing and licensing again. It's exciting, but it was a long journey back. And you said that when you were in school, you just keep asking for help. Every time something came up, you would just ask for help. And as long as they were nice people, they would help you. That's something that I think I forget. I just need to go ask for help. And if the first person can't help me, go to the next person or whatever. But don't put all of my hope and dreams into getting that answer. Otherwise, it'll be too discouraging and I'll quit again. Does that make sense? I know I sound like I'm rambling a little bit because I'm just really talking from my heart, but that's what I'm hoping to be inspired by you more. And I already have been encouraged.
No, I mean, yeah, I think, I've always just something I learned while in New York, because everyone is so bold there, is just why not ask for what you need or want? Because the worst case, someone says no. Okay, move on, next person.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think it's very valuable just to ask, especially as young people, just ask for help, because sometimes people will see a younger version of themselves in you and they're going to want to give you advice and help. And I've always just been in the habit of whenever probably out of social awkwardness, but whenever I've met people that are older than me and really good at what they do, and I'm struggling for conversation, I'd be like, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? And then they always have very interesting thoughts. So yeah, I'm never afraid to ask for advice most of the time, because I know they'll say something, or they'll just give a no, and then I'll just move on.
What's interesting though, is I'm not afraid to ask questions. I think I forget that I can. I think the older I get, the more I think I'm supposed to know this already. I should already have this figured out. Guess what? You don't ever have it all figured out. You're always still figuring it out, right? And by definition of inventing, you're asking new questions, which means you're figuring new things out. They just go together.
100%. I mean, oh, go ahead.
No, please finish that.
I was just going to say, I am, though, in a bad habit. Sometimes when I'm in conversations with people and I'm like interested, but not fully, and they say something that I don't know, I'll just like nod and pretend that I know what they're saying because I just want the conversation to end. So sometimes I'll do that where I should be asking a question, but it's become such a horrible habit of mine that I just accept it.
But I think that's healthy, because if you're not interested, you're being respectful and letting them say what they need to say.
Yeah.
You don't need to carry the conversation, and your time is becoming more and more valuable because you are in demand. Because
but I mean, it's bad.
Two Jimmy Fallon across.
I'll be with friends. We're having a group conversation with some new person at like a conference, and then we speak to this person, and then my friend goes, "So what were they talking about?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. I was just playing along." So that I need to fix, but it's okay.
I can relate. I get mansplained all the time. So that's just how, and especially it's attorneys and engineers that I really have to work hard at earning their respect. And then I get it. It's fine, but it's not assumed when I walk in the room ever. Right. So I have to sit there and nod my head and smile a lot until we get past that and can talk about what really matters. What would you say was well, actually, I'm going to move on from this for a minute. And just as a reminder to our audience, we only have about a little less than 15 minutes left, and Andini has another appointment right after this. So we've got to finish right on time. So be sure and drop your questions in, because there is a little bit of a time delay. I want to make sure you get them in on time if there's anything that you'd like answered. So your passion is really in problem solving and being creative, film, art, inventing, whatever expression that creativity takes, right? Would you say that there's one over another, one application of that creativity that you're more passionate about, or does it not really matter as long as you're expressing that?
It's a good question. I'd say right now I'm focusing more on writing, and that side. I'm writing my first book on the inventing mindset. So I guess I'm focused more on that. But I think ideas come to me all the time, every day. So I'm always just writing things down or drawing things and leaving it be and seeing what I have time to pick up and develop as things go along.
Is it time, or is it, this is what I'm most excited about and want to spend that time on?
So many things. Like I couldn't even tell you the amount of projects I've proposed over the past 6 months, or like things I've come up with. I'm like, I really want to do that. And I sometimes I have so many options. I just get overwhelmed and I don't work on anything because it's like, I wish I could give more time to this or that. But I mean, it's one thing to wish to give more time, and it's best just to like do it, even if it's just for half an hour every day. But yeah, I have so many different projects, and I'd love to do all of them, but I'm not. So
pick. I feel like I've made some of those mistakes and picked the wrong one a couple of times.
That's also here.
Yeah. And when you can't get, it's not about the failure, honestly. It's, I can't get that time back that I could have been doing something else. That's
what you learn, I think, from every project that you embark on, whether it works or not.
Yeah.
That's something that I've experienced, but yeah.
As long as you're learning, then it wasn't a total loss. In fact, it was incredibly valuable. It may have been an expensive lesson in time or money, but there's a lot of value in that too.
For sure.
And you're always learning anyway. What would you say was the smartest decision you've ever made with regard to your inventions specifically?
Getting patents. I think getting protection, and with the patents, you can license it, you can make your own company and produce it. I think patents are very valuable to have, just a headache to get.
And you're in Canada?
Yes.
And you got your patents in the United States?
Yes.
What was your strategy there?
No strategy, just get the patents with my patents.
Why not Canada or anywhere else in the country?
I got Canada as well. Canada, North America. Europe is like a whole other ball game, or China, and I was like, this is enough for now, and then come along and give me a lot more money, then sure.
Right. Yeah, that must be costing a lot.
Yeah.
I've never gotten a patent in Canada, so I'm not sure what that process is. Is it harder or easier in the US or Canada?
It's kind of knowing, like, I will file with the exact same patent application that I got approved of, this recently happened, at the USPTO, and will file for it in the Canadian Patent Office, and then they'll object to it and be like, this is wrong with it. You need to choose between one of 4 designs, and I'm like, but I literally got the patent in the US one, so why is Canada making a big fuss over this?
I have heard that. I've had other clients tell me the same thing.
Yeah, and the online system for Canada versus US is equally questionable. But yeah, it's definitely, they don't make patents easy to get, which I understand. But there should be a program for young entrepreneurs or people that want to get patents under like 21, or there should be something like that to help people, because it's a lot. Yeah.
It can add up. And so the patents that you got are just on the mug and the flashlight, or have you applied for anything else?
Just those 2 with different iterations of their designs and continuation patents, things like that.
Wow, I cannot believe how fast this hour is going by. It always does, and I always say that, like I'm surprised. I don't know why I am. They do just fly by. So what is next for you? Are you going to focus on one application of your creativity, like acting or film or whatever, or inventing, and then have the rest just kind of fill in gaps? Or are you letting that unfold for you as you go?
I don't know. I think I'm still figuring it out. I mean, right now, my plan for the next few months is by December, I'll have finished my degree finally, and I will have finished my manuscript, my first draft of my book for the Inventing Mindset. So both of those will be done. And then I'm seeing what comes up. In the meantime, I just earn money through public speaking or working with brands, both of which are happening right now, and stuff coming up for the fall. And then been pitching a TV show that I really want to host about futurism, which is how past art, especially film and TV, has predicted and influenced current science and technology. So it's all about how art and science work together, and kind of breaking down the different stereotypes about people who do art versus science, and that they aren't totally separate subjects like we are so in school.
Right.
So I've been developing that show for the past year and pitching it with the production company, all of that. It's just difficult to get a show that has anything to do with science picked up by a network, because most American networks are afraid nobody in America will want to watch it. And it's also hard when you're not famous with millions of followers to be like, I should host the show, which is just stupid, but I get it. That's Hollywood today.
Well, I've seen your YouTube channel. There's not it's pretty diverse in terms of what you've got. You have more than one, don't you?
No, I just have one. Yeah.
Okay, so I was probably looking at other people's channels too that you are also on.
Yeah.
But I would watch that show if you put it on YouTube. I would subscribe and watch it. And there's other ways that you can monetize it if you even have to. But like, that sounds amazing.
No, yeah, it's true. It's true. So it does feel like it needs to be something more that I do myself at this point. But yeah, so I'm pitching the show, the book, school, inventing. I felt very discouraged after the last thing that happened to me, so I kind of took a break from it, and was also digging myself out of the hole that was created of it in 2021.
Yeah.
So maybe in 2023, when my school is done, I'll start again on some new designs, or I don't know, maybe find like a fellowship at some design place in London or Europe or something like that, and try living there for a bit. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very open, and things come in all the time, and I'm always pitching different projects to people, so we will see.
Well, you are 100-year-old woman in the body of a 24-year-old woman. Your wisdom, your experience, your fearlessness, your drive, your creativity are all admirable, and I'm really grateful that you chose to share that with us today on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. The conversation was really fun.
Absolutely. For those of you who would like to know more about Indini, here's her website, Ann Makosinski. Thank you. I'm sorry. Makosinski, which is ANN for those of you who are just listening, ANNMAKOSINSKI.com. And you can connect with her there to learn more about her and follow her journey, because I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun to watch play out. When your book is ready, I hope you'll come back. I'd love to talk about it more then also. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm afraid it's time to wrap up, but special thanks to the Invention Accelerator for making this program possible. If you've enjoyed the show today, please help us get the word out by sharing our show with your network, your family, friends, whatever social media you want to put it out on, and following InvenTank on Spotify, iHeart, or Amazon Music. When you subscribe, you help me get more great guests like Andini today and continue to bring you more incredible shows. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you again, Andini. You all have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.